Hello everyone, welcome back to Touch the Fire Twice. I'm Joshua, and I'm here today to do an in-depth sniff and comparison review of the Nest New York Autumn Plum candle. This is their traditional classic candle, 8.1 ounces in the single wick formula, burn time of about 50 to 60 hours. The Autumn Plum candle, I believe, has been out a couple of years in a row. This is coming back for fall autumn 2022. I've actually never purchased it. This is the first time that I have sniffed, purchased, and of course reviewed it. And I have burned this once or twice already, so this is a post-burn review. I'll do my traditional Touch the Fire Twice in-depth sniff comparison review, meaning I will sort of look through the blend, the notes that are listed here, sort of give my interpretation, analysis of it, talk a bit about the actual performance of the candle since it is post-burn review, and then also do a sniff comparison to, I have two other plum-based fragrances here both from Bath & Body Works, one during the Slatkin & Co. era and one post Slatkin & Co. with White Barn, that I'll compare this to that you may be familiar with to give sort of that side-by-side comparison of some of the different types of plum fragrance builds. So getting right into this, first I will just read you the notes and show you the candle here. So again, your traditional Nest, I think everyone's familiar with it. You do have this small dust cover on here. And then this is a pretty purple glass jar here with just the frosted pinstripes and just a little bit of sort of a metallic gold on there as well. Notes on this one. Wild plum and cinnamon are wrapped in the warmth of patchouli leaf and cashmere wood to capture the sweet, woody aroma of freshly fallen autumn leaves. So I was excited to get into this, and you can see here what a perfect, honestly, perfect burn this had. This had a really strong throw, and it had a nice, healthy, even pull. It didn't take super long. That's one thing that I am impressed with Nest is single wicks across brands from, your Bath & Body Works up to your super high-end, $80, $90 candle single wicks are very hit or miss in the sense that sometimes it takes forever depending on, is it soy, is it paraffin, is it coconut, is it a blend, what is the wax, for it to fully pull out. Nest, even with this diameter of a healthy, what is this, 3.5-inch diameter or so, it gets a full pull and it really doesn't need kind of babied or the, foil around it like some single wick candles do require. It gets a nice healthy pull and a really substantial throw as well. And it's just a really pretty deep, I mean, that is the deepest plum colored wax you could imagine in wax. Sniffing this, so we're going for, again, autumn plum. They're saying freshly fallen autumn leaves, so you're talking a bit, earthy, kind of that forest floor, which I'm really into. Nest Charcoal Woods has very much that sort of forest floor essence. Thinking to this now, that actually might be a really nice layering scent in, one room and then maybe across the house or a few rooms over. That blending with this could be really nice. But your primary notes being wild plum, cinnamon, patchouli leaf, and cashmere woods. So it's strong. It's this really seductive, deep, rich, fruity, woody, actually considered gourmand. At least on the Nest website, they consider this a spicy gourmand family, which I think shows folks that gourmand is essentially, food, a plum, not always a bakery. So bakery is maybe a subcategory of gourmand, but by no means does gourmand always mean true foodie bakery. But because of the warmth, the richness, and the plum base, this is still considered gourmand. It is deep. It is syrupy. It is rich. It is warm. It is a bit spicy from that cinnamon, like a traditional soft cinnamon, not your red hots, not your, what some people consider like a Christmas cinnamon, more like a malling Ceylon cinnamon. A little hint of the patchouli in there, which I'll get into in a minute when I do my kind of in-depth on this. But just the slightest kind of herbal camphor earthiness from your patchouli leaf. And then the cashmere wood we'll get into as well. But certainly this is a really finely tuned balance of fresh, deep, rich plums, a bit of the warmth of the spice, a clean, earthy freshness from the patchouli, and then the depth of that wood. So digging into the notes specifically, so plum, of course, most people have eaten plums. You know what plums are. They're a stone fruit. They're going to be fruity, juicy, soft, sweet, sometimes considered in fine fragrance to be velvety. As far as a traditional fruit goes, really almost candied, syrupy, a bit of a tang, but a subtle fruit, but a nice blend of fresh and candied and dried almost, like the full spectrum in one fruit. And it is the star of the show here very, very clearly. And cinnamon is going to be I believe, sort of your Ceylon cinnamon, a softer cinnamon, a little bit powdery, that soft, sweet, spicy, enticing, comforting, warm gourmand that we know and many love. Some, don't love, but I think you haven't found the right cinnamon. Maybe you're thinking just your red hot, big red candy, and this is not your heat cinnamon. This is your warming. This is not your burning cinnamon, and it is soft and it is very straightforward in that cinnamon bark. Patchouli is an interesting one because patchouli is actually, people think of it as this just heady, sort of hippie, dirty, musky note, which true and kind of true, but at the same time, it is a leaf that is distilled into the fragrance and is actually related to the mint plant. Patchouli is really strong, sometimes considered actually to have a sweetness to it, but really falls in that musky, earthy, woody, kind of humid, almost a dark smell. Now there's sort of two facets to patchouli. You can have that side that is really the dried, dark, almost like a mushroom or a cellar or just a little bit musty or dusty or forest floor. But then you can also have sort of the heart of patchouli. It's a bit brighter, a bit kind of cleaned up with a bit of that sharp, almost camphor kind of note to it. And I would say this one is a balance between the two, but this is not a heavy, dark patchouli. This is a bit of that, dare I say, sweeter, brighter, fresher, a little bit of that camphor patchouli leaf. And then cashmere wood is interesting because cashmere wood itself is not actually a timber, a wood, but it is an accord that is used in fine fragrance that typically is going to be a mix of kind of 4 core key notes, which are your ambergris, cedarwood, vanilla, and musk. And that's going to give you the cashmere woods. Cashmere woods, it's going to be spicy, musky, woody, almost a little bit of a fruitiness to it, warm, but you really do think soft and rich and round. Digging into those 4 notes that I do think are worth thinking about so that when you hear cashmere woods, you know sort of what you're going for versus, is it just like a sandalwood? Is it just like an oak? What is it? So picking out those 4, picking out ambergris. So ambergris is sweet, earthy. It is the traditional amber that we think of that was literally from the sperm whale and it's sort of like leftover byproduct from their intestines, quite frankly. That is not what is actually used these days, but when that sort of ages, it becomes almost like tobacco, sandalwood, musky, animalic. They describe it as sort of the wood from an old church, centuries old church. And so, you're drawn to it, but it might be a little strange, but it can be really intriguing. So that's your ambergris. Then you've got cedar, your traditional cedar wood, which really is probably one of my favorite woods. It's really unlike other woods where, you think of your sandalwood and your pine, really, your strong woods like that. Cedar is gonna be a little bit softer, have almost a little bit of that camphor scent. It's more of a cooling wood. I think of it as a bit darker, soft and resinous. And to me, it feels wetter than sort of a deep dried sandalwood or oak with a powderiness. You're not gonna get any sort of powdery note from cedar wood. Then you get into your musk. Of course, your musk's, again, very animalic. That's going to be whether it's a sheer musk, a white musk, musks from around the world. It's gonna be that animalic. It's gonna be sort of a heaviness. It's going to be in the family of woods and your ambers and your resins, your frankincense, all of those, your ambrox. But so musk is going to be your sort of traditional veil of deep bass resinous note. And then of course vanilla. You've got many different types of vanillas as well, from your floral vanilla, your traditional vanilla bean, but we know that vanilla is sort of that sweet, can be a little bit earthy, but traditional vanilla that just adds a bit of that gourmand, sweet edge to a fragrance. So putting your ambergris, your cedarwood, your musk, and your vanilla together, that is really the accord that brings you cashmere woods. And that's what I love about fragrances. We might see 4 notes listed on the box and on the website for this, but there's so much more going on there. Even just if we pull apart those 4 notes, we've already pulled that into 7 notes right from the start. It is just seductive and sweet and calming in a sense. It is in many ways very much a dark, a nighttime candle. It's almost an entryway candle for those who don't like things that are too heavily woody, because it's sort of your spicy woody or your gourmand woody. It's not just all the woods and heavy things and tobaccos and sandalwoods with a little bit of, bergamot on top of it. It is your fruity woody, but with that base of the cashmere wood, you're getting plenty of heavy hitting bass notes, but that fruit on top mixed with that a little bit fresh patchouli and the sweet spicy cinnamon really brings a sweet, dare I say, freshness to that base of the cashmere woods. I can't say enough good things about this blend. It's really exactly what I was hoping it would be when I read the description. And getting into the comparison part of this review, I've realized I really enjoy plum fragrances, but I don't have many, haven't had many. So if there are any that you'd recommend, primarily in home fragrance, but even if there is fine fragrance, I'd be happy to hear if there's some plum forward blend that you think is really worth checking out. But there were two fragrances from, again, White Barn, Bath & Body Works, one Slack & Co., one not Slack & Co., that I really enjoyed and have not come back. And this feels like a really great replacement for an even elevated version of a few of these notes. First, I'll go to the one that it's least like, that is the older scent, but certainly is worth comparing because it is a plum fragrance, and that is Plum Wine Amber. This was from White Barn Fall 2012, which is kind of towards the tail end of the Slack & Co. partnership at Bath & Body Works White Barn. The notes on this one: a splendid blend of mulled wine, golden amber, and purple plum creates a fragrance that recalls the richest of fall days. So you've got your mulled wine, so spiced in some sort of red wine. They don't really get too descriptive there. Amber, again, part of that deeper, muskier bottom, and then plum. They're not really very similar other than the plum and maybe a little bit. This is sort of like the Kids Bop version of like a Cardi B song. This is a very simplified, lighter weight version of the heavy hitter of the Autumn Plum. But at the same time, it's nice. It's sweet. It's not super complex. It doesn't really give you the forest, but certainly there's a little, it's like the little hint, like toying with amber. And quite frankly, when I purchased this in 2012, I was really just starting to dig into home fragrance and wasn't doing much beyond Bath & Body Works. So to explore plum with a little bit of like the spices and a little bit of some sort of, musky bottom note like the amber, it was a nice entry into that. And I think it still is a very pretty blend, but it's obviously not as complex, and it's not even as autumn as I'd like it to be, even though it has those mulling spices. It's just much more simplistic and straightforward, and could almost be year-round in the sense the plum is a bit more of a fresh plum versus dark, deep, sweet, kind of velvety gourmet plum that you're gonna get in Autumn Plum, but still a nice fragrance. But the one that I actually do find that it is kind of similar to, and I'm really happy to see, is White Barn Peppered Plum. Now this launched, it was a one and done in mid-2017. It was actually supposed to come back sometime mid-2022. It seems like it appeared in some test stores or limited stores alongside some other kind of more mature blends, and didn't go wide or hasn't seen light of day. Could show up at some point, but was not released widely, which I was really hoping it would, and it wasn't. Notes on this: sweet plum, fresh saffron spice, black peppercorn. Okay. I love this scent. I will say almost a toss-up between the Nest. The Nest is more complex, more intriguing. If I had to choose between the two, I would go for the Autumn Plum for certain. But there's something to be said for this peppered plum. There's a really nice blend here that I would like to see. These are, close sisters, they're not twins. But this has very similar plum to it, executed very similarly to the vibe, that when you sniff them not side by side, you're like, oh yeah, this takes the place of the pepper plum if this never comes back. What pepper plum has that's a little bit different is saffron, certainly, which saffron is usually put into fragrances to be sort of almost leathery, but saffron, I could take 15 minutes just describing saffron, because it's one of those fragrances that is, if you know it, you know it, and if you don't, it's really hard to explain the smell, let alone the taste of saffron, which is used in cooking around the world. Soft, earthy, hay-like. Some people say a little rubbery, some people say kind of leathery, strong. But the other thing, I don't get so much on the peppercorn. I wouldn't mind it to be a little bit, sharper, astringent, peppery, but it's there a bit in the background, a softer peppercorn. But what I do get is almost like a soft sandalwood, like a santal, that traditional warm, soft, comfort sandalwood. Not heavy on it, because it's still fresher with the plum, but certainly a bit of a sandalwood in here versus the wood you get in here, which is not a sandalwood base. It is that cashmere wood, that the true wood part of that is going to be more of cedar wood. So this is almost a bit softer. This is less dripping. This is just a bit drier and not as complex. Still a nice scent. This one is going to be, it just feels so rich. It's like a heavy, heavy, velvety blanket that's just flowing over you with the plum, with a little bit of that spiced cinnamon, a hint of the freshness from patchouli, which I know sounds weird to say freshness from patchouli, but truly that's what I get from here. A tiny bit of that kind of camphor in the background, and the cashmere wood to just make it so deep and not just a fresh fruity. It is that gourmand woody. So huge fan of this. I'm gonna have to get another one of these. I'm hoping that Nest brings this back every year, but this is one where I've actually never purchased a Nest 3-wick before, but this could very well be the first 3-wick that I purchase in Nest because it's just such a great scent. Though I will say, even in a decent sized room, this is gonna give you throw, you know, like your 3-wick candles that you're used to, even more than say, like, this is stronger than some 4-wick Homeworks candles, certainly. It's got really a heavy hit of fragrance oils in there. So if you like those sort of seductive, fruity, spicy, borderline woody fragrances, definitely check out Nest Autumn Plum. Let me know what you think of this. If you know any other plum scents, happy to hear about them. And until next time, take care.